Good afternoon, everyone. It is January the 24th, 2026. I want to put more up the last two videos on the polar vortex because there's things I think people don't realize, and especially I want to talk about our young people today and our children. Whereas, as this old lady here has been around for several decades, let's put it that way, I've seen the change in the weather patterns due to the climate change that we're talking about today, that we weren't seeing back in the 60s and 70s for sure, when I was definitely around. And so I want to talk about some of the things about frostbite and this cold weather, and sometimes our young people do not take it as seriously, as well as because I've been around so long, and with the climate change, a lot of our young people never went through the type of cold that we went through previously before the climate change that I've seen it started anyhow, and they don't know how to dress properly for it. And I don't want them thinking it's a joke, period. That frostbite's not a joke. And I know even when I was young and going through the particular cold snaps, and that's long before the Arctic started to melt, and the weather was completely different back then. And so some of our kids, our teenagers, for example, the girls, would, we'll just go out with bare legs when it's 20 or 30 below sometimes, because they want to look good, they're on their fashion clothes and everything, and they want to really look good for the guy. Well, as my mother says, you don't want to look good for the guy, you just want to know that you're warm. You don't do that sort of stuff, So, kids don't really think. Their brains are thinking in a different mode from what we are, when it's a lot better to be warm and cozy and dressing in layers, knowing how to dress in layers. And then going forward too, you also have the young people have not experienced the cold winters that we've had, and are not sure, have not been properly taught or shown how to dress in this cold that we've had. So they don't really realize just how serious a frostbite is. So we as adults that have been through it really need to make sure that, especially say we're grandparents as well as our parents that have managed to go through some of this, need to make sure that our children and our grandchildren know how to be prepared for this type of weather that we're experiencing right now, like how to dress in layers, like when to take the layer off, when to make sure you put that layer back on, make sure your skin is fully covered. And of course, what is good about these videos that I am putting up as well, it tells you how to be prepared as well. So it's another good idea and visual idea of how to help everyone make sure that they are prepared for this cold. And as well as people, when they're not prepared for this type of cold, they don't realize that what they need to do is, like myself, because I'm retired and I really don't have to go out and bundle up and work anymore. I can watch the weather reports. Okay, I've got 2 or 3 days, like I'm at the moment, where I'm going to be stuck in the house, and I need to be prepared. So I make sure I have enough food and whatever else I need in the house, and batteries and flashlights and everything like that, and sort of a brief emergency type of kit set up, which I think is a good idea as well. And I think looking back on it now, from what we used to have and what we have now, when you're not prepared, and I think with the way the climate is changing, and the forest fires, the floods, the volcanoes, the earthquakes, everything that's happening right now, I'm also beginning to think it might be a very good idea unfortunately, I don't want to burden our teachers anymore, but our young people, since they're in schools a lot, I think they should be doing a little bit on emergency preparedness for our children, like they used to do years ago after the Second World War, and especially after the bombing of Hiroshima, where they made sure what they did was they took the school children and made sure that we knew enough that we had to get underneath our desks. And I can have vague memories of climbing underneath my desk at school because something bad was going to happen. I didn't quite fully realize it. I was quite young at the time, so I didn't realize what this drill was about. But it was just an ordinary drill, kind of like a fire drill that we normally would have at school. So I think that would be very helpful as the teachers, to figure out some emergency preparedness to help prepare our children at the same time, so that they know what to do and are making sure that they're dressed up as well for the cold weather, or they don't want to dehydrate, and what they should be doing in the summer to make sure that they're hydrated, and that to remind our children what they should be doing. Now, it wasn't until the 80s that we didn't start talking about climate change, but for me personally, having experienced it, I started seeing this back in 1970, that something was changing, because as I've said in previous videos, I've been to Holland, Belgium, France, England, and Scotland, and that was August of 1970. I was 17 years old at the time, and it was kind of, whoa, getting off the plane in Holland, our first stop, was quite something, because when we got off the plane, when we got on the plane, from the American side of Niagara Falls, it was a beautiful, sunny, cool day. So we got into the plane, into the air conditioning, we're all comfortable. But when we got to the Holland airport, went to step off the train, we couldn't breathe. It was just like a wall of heat hitting us. And that year, they were having what they said was the worst drought in 100 years in 1970. And now with all the stuff that's changing weather-wise, we're saying, oh, this is the worst that we've had in 100 years, and this is the worst we've ever had in 1,000 years. But this was back in 1970, and they had to actually put us back on the plane because we couldn't get off, because we were with asthma, we couldn't breathe, and we were wheezing, so we had to be put back in the air conditioning, and then the school nurse had to give us pills just so we could get off the plane. So that was where I started seeing it, the changes, because, and then that winter of 70-71, of course, that was when we had the biggest snowfall here, and the record snowfall in 1970-71, the winter where the snowbanks were like 12 feet high in some places, and right up to our second floors in other places. And so it was really quite a change, and the storms were really bad. And of course, storms sometimes from the western prairies come through the middle where I'm living, and then they go out to our Maritimes, and then they go out to sea. Well, that year as well, they were going out to sea all right, but they were picking up, and it was so bad. I remember seeing films of Britain at that time in 1970, that winter, and they just got slammed like we were with the storms too. It was really bad. So I've seen the change starting from there, and then you get into the 80s and you see it slowly changing and getting warmer as the time progresses. Or you'd be getting really bad ice storms, such as even back in the 90s when we had our 98 ice storm here, and whole eastern Ontario was under ice at that time. And then, as I've mentioned about the cold temperatures being minus 52 in my previous video there, where I was talking about Toronto and Ottawa under minus 52. Well, this morning I got up and it was minus 33, and the normal temperature was minus 15. And then, of course, you add the wind factor on top of that. So we're in for a few days, and I just wanted to give people a better idea of being around for a few decades and seeing this change. Now, this change is coming with very erratic weather, and we don't know what's going to hit us. And that's why I feel that those of us who've lived through a lot of things, we should sit down with our young people and tell them what we had to do in emergencies, sometimes what we had to do in the old-fashioned ways that our parents told her in emergencies. There's a lot that we can do, but I think right now it's not only preparing ourselves, but we need to also prepare our young people as well. And whether it's survival books, whatever, we need to be preparing ourselves, because this is not going to go until we can get a grasp on the climate change, or it's going to get a lot worse. So we've got to be prepared either way of how things are going to go, hopefully for the better. But I just wanted to bring people into the way I'm thinking of how things need to be done, because emergency preparedness is, I think, also number one top priority that everybody should be thinking about right now as well, with what's going on with the climate. So I'm going to leave it there, everyone, today. Take care, be safe, watch your surroundings, and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.